Welcome to the second in our series entitled The Isolated Leader. My name is Nathan Akers, and I am one of the principal consultants at Active Consulting. We're all about management and leadership, and more importantly, making people, teams, and businesses more effective. Today I have the privilege of talking to you about motivation, specifically motivating your teams. There are a few that would challenge me on the fact that a motivated team is a good thing. For us at Active Consulting, it's the correlation between motivation and effectiveness that interests us. It's a really interesting concept, and it's a concept that's kind of been imposed upon us as managers and leaders as an activity that we should be good at, that we should be naturally good at to ensure that teams we lead are engaged and ultimately their performance improves. It's the kind of thing that you would expect someone to say that they're good at in a job interview. The interesting thing is that when you press them for how they actually go about this thing called motivation, they often stumble and find it difficult to describe what it is that they actually do to motivate others. I'd like to start with a couple of statements. The first a little more controversial than the second. So here's the first. I don't believe I can motivate you, because I know that you are already motivated. What you're motivated to do and what I want you to do might be two different things, but you are still motivated. And the second is that motivating others is not something you do to them, but something you do with them. As managers and leaders, we have delivery objectives to meet, and as such, we need to focus our attention on our teams. This is made increasingly difficult through remote working. And often I hear a manager or a leader talk about ensuring that their team is motivated or that a particular person needs motivating. What I hear is that what those others are doing, or in some instances not doing, is contrary to the picture that that leader has in their mind of what they should be doing. So what they're really saying is that they simply want to redirect the emotion. So let's start from a position of motivation being a direction of energy or movement. Let's unpick this word motivation. As so much of the English language did, the word started its life in Latin, then it found its way into French before being used in English. Motion, to move, became motive, which is a reason for moving. By adding the suffix of ation, we're now into considering the action or the result of that action. Now it's morphed from the idea of physical or mechanical motion, and it's moved into the psychological and more recently the work environments. What is it that we're looking to move? And what is the reason for that movement? Maybe I need to move your action or your activity, your attitude, your behavior, or encourage you to complete a task or objective. The movement I am after is always in a specific direction, and this is how motion became motive and onto motivation. Remember, I've already said this. I don't think I can motivate you. But the idea of redirection of your activity is understandable. It's part of our role. As managers and leaders, we need to ensure that the activity being undertaken is contributing to the team's goals. In order to do that, we need the team to come together. Part of our responsibility is to ensure that the team is moving in the right direction. And more importantly, that we are all moving in the right direction cohesively. If you're going to put energy into a system with the intent of causing motion or changing the direction of that motion, what is the purpose of the motion? Having a clear, well-defined purpose or a collective why are we choosing to do this rather than that, has been shown to be a genuine motivator. So is your team clear about its purpose? Do we have an inspirational team vision and a practical team mission? Are individual contributors clear about their roles and responsibilities? Do people know what their objectives are and how they will be measured? Have we been explicit with our milestones or our standards and expected behaviours? A lack in any one of these has been shown to be a demotivator. So with these missing, you're fighting against yourself from the outset. As I've said, and I'll say it again, as a manager, you can't motivate your teams. And the reason is that they are already motivated. You can definitely demotivate them. What might exist is an inconsistency or a disconnect between what you would like your teams to do and what they are currently motivated to do. What we need to do as managers and leaders is work out how to tap into that already existing motivation to get stuff done. Some of it they'll want to do, some of it not so much. Consider each member of your team to have a combination lock, and behind that lock is a motivated employee. You haven't motivated them, you've just worked out the combination to unlock what was already there. Let's think about the situation we find ourselves in. When working remotely, some individuals are struggling to stay motivated, and the easy thing to do is sit all day in their pajamas and watch Netflix. One hand on the remote and the other hand reaching for another snack. Or at the opposite end of the same spectrum, I'm stressed from working too many hours and I struggle to switch off, or I feel isolated, lonely and detached from my team. Keep in mind that one of the fringe benefits of attending that place called work is the social side. So I get to connect with others every day with little or no effort. Yes, there are digital or virtual alternatives such as Skype and MS Teams, etc. But these all take effort, and then I need to work out what's an acceptable level of social time on a company-sponsored, perhaps stretched, network. A place of work also offers structure of a start and a finish time. Again, it's easy to say, we'll just stop at 5. But as we all know, work is unending, and I'm continually questioning myself as to whether I'm doing enough to prove to my boss that I'm not spending all day in my PJs watching Netflix. So these are just two of the many constructs that are no longer in place. As Alina mentioned last week, this is a change, and as with any change, individuals deal with them differently. So take some time to understand how the individuals in your team are feeling about this change. As managers and leaders, we need to consider our role in smoothing this change and gently moving people in a more productive direction. You can call this motivating them if you like. So let's explore some of the environmental factors that can be used to tap into this motivation that already exists. I've already mentioned what I consider to be the fundamental of team effectiveness. It's an inspirational vision and a practical mission. As a manager, the temptation is to dive in and get this done and dusted as a matter of expediency. However, engaging the whole team in this process of creating the vision is highly motivating as they feel part of the solution. It's a bit like the difference between owning and renting a home. When you rent, there is always a little bit of this, it's not mine and it won't be mine in the future. And you feel no connection to that house. And the question, is it of any value to improve my situation here? But when you own the same house, it becomes a home. It now means something to you and you feel connected to it. You want every member of your team to feel connected to the team's vision, its mission, its strategy, and the tactics. You want them to be owners of those ideas, not renters. Jonathan and Alina are going to go into these in more details in the future sessions. So make sure you make time for those. Many people think that motivating looks something like this, something that somebody else does to others. A number of years ago, I had a fantastic opportunity to work with some really talented people in a startup operation in Bahrain. Towards the end of our work and just prior to their go live, one of the managers stood up on the desk and outlined the great work that had been done by everyone, thanked them for the late nights and the missed weekends, extolling the difference they were going to make in society starting tomorrow. He congratulated the senior management and the investors for their wisdom, their guidance, and their cash. What I realized at this point was that this manager felt that it was their responsibility to motivate the group. That he felt the group needed an injection of enthusiasm and excitement to be motivated for the task to follow. and that by standing on a desk, he was demonstrating his competency in motivating others, which really got me thinking about this concept of motivation and motivating others. This is a typical sight at a conference, seminar, or rally, and it's because of events such as this that many of us see motivation as something that comes from outside of us. And when this magic is applied, people will act, think, and behave differently. The science is clear. Motivational events have very limited impacts. They might make us feel good for a short while, but it is uncommon for them to have lasting impacts that dramatically change how we operate, our behaviours, or our actions. So the science is not overly favourable towards us as managers having lasting motivational impacts on our teams. In last week's session, which I hope you all attended, if you didn't, you can access the slides by contacting Jonathan Smith, and he'll get them to you. Alina discussed many things about personal or self-motivation, and lots of it came back to the idea of the primal urges of fight or flight and their role in keeping us safe. One of the challenges we have in today's world is that for most of us, we don't have to worry about safety on a day-to-day basis. Or we didn't. Things have changed. I went to the supermarket earlier in the week, and for the first time ever, as I walked around, I realised I was asking myself a question. The question was, do I feel safe in this place? Do these people not understand the concept of social distancing? Who was the last person to touch this piece of fruit? My sympathetic nervous system, which directs my body's involuntary response to danger or stressful situations, was starting to creep into my conscious awareness. My heart rate was increasing as my fight or flight started to hijack my physiological systems. I guess you could say I was feeling threatened in a supermarket by an avocado. This was decreasing my motivation to be there. I was still motivated, just in a different way, to be done as quickly as possible and get out of there. So what does this have to do with my team? Well, in the world as it was 3 to 4 weeks ago, you were sitting next to your team members, or they were in the next office, perhaps they were on the other side of the partition, or just down the hall. And you could always get up and go and see them. You could call a team meeting in which everybody would come together face to face. You could grab a coffee or get some lunch together. Everything was ticking along nicely. No one felt overly threatened. All of a sudden it's changed, and what we used to take for granted has been taken away from us. Suddenly, threat is creeping into our day-to-day, where it didn't previously exist. For some managers, this perceived threat is now that they have to achieve some miracle of motivation to ensure that their teams continue to perform their objectives and work in a totally foreign work environment. As a manager, I should know my team and understand how some of them will react to these challenges. Perhaps the change in the work environment is highlighting the fact that maybe I don't know my team as well as I should. Perhaps the fact that they were just down the hall on the other side of the partition has allowed me to let the interpersonal side of things slip. Do I understand their why? Have I just been focusing on the what they can do and what they can deliver for the organisation? Do I actually know why they come to work, why they choose to work for our company, why they are so diligent in one area but not in another? Why do they want to start so early? Why do they send emails at 2 a.m? Have I been lazy in understanding my team and what makes each person an individual? This means getting personal. It's not just business. This is going to be a challenge to many. As over my business lifetime and many of the organisations I've worked with or in, getting personal is actively discouraged. If you want to motivate your people, they need to know you care. In order to demonstrate you care, you're going to need to know more about them. So let's take a step at this point into the world of psychology, and where all this motivational stuff started. Psychologist Abraham Maslow first introduced his now famous concept of a hierarchy of needs in 1943. This hierarchy suggests people are motivated to fill basic needs before moving on to the other more advanced needs. The hierarchy has material needs of food, water, security, and safety at the bottom, and psychological needs of belonging, self-esteem, and self-actualization up at the apex. Maslow's theory states that each individual need must be satisfied at the lower levels before they can progress to the higher, more complex level. I need a safe place to live before I can start pondering the meaning of life. And once those lower level needs are satisfied, individuals are no longer motivated by them. And in the past, I was not really concerned about the material needs of food and safety. But perhaps the situation we find ourselves in today has changed that. Every person is capable of and has a desire to move up the hierarchy towards a level of self-actualization. Unfortunately, progress is often disrupted by failure to meet lower level needs. Life experiences, including divorce, loss of jobs, and the health crisis of today may cause an individual to fluctuate between the levels in the hierarchy where they might previously have given little or no thought to. So what does this mean for me as a manager, wanting to motivate my team? Remember, when I say motivate, I'm really talking about channeling their energies in a specific direction. Maslow was convinced that we need to satisfy lower level needs before progressing up the hierarchy. So if my needs at one level are not being met, it's difficult for me to be motivated on the level above. Let's think again about how this current situation could impact my capacity to satisfy those needs. Am I worried about my health or the health of those around me? Do I now feel threatened that my role is in danger? Am I going to be able to weather the economic storm? What about the overall viability of the company? Due to perceived or real threat, I might be trying to satisfy my material needs of security and safety rather than my psychological needs offered by the relationships in the team, or feeling part of that team, or looking to a brighter future, promotion, or delivering high quality work on time. I'm sure you can see that this could have a direct impact on my level of. So the role of the manager in motivating their teams at this point is to better understand the position each team member is in. Demonstrate empathy. Ask questions with the intent to understand, not to offer comment, one up, solve, fix, agree, disagree. Just listen. We need to be careful not to allow ourselves to fall back on traditional forms of motivation related to either reward or a punishment. If someone is demotivated, the easy thing to do is to inform them that if their performance doesn't improve, their position might need to be reviewed, or try to induce them with the offer of a bonus. What we need to know is, why are they demotivated? Unfortunately, the idea of the carrot and the stick has invaded our thinking on motivation, as it appeals to our sense of logic. That is, it just feels right, away from and towards either pain or pleasure. However, this type of thinking has been shown to be flawed. What happens when you run out of rewards? It's been shown in numerous studies that children who expected to be continually rewarded for an activity were less likely to engage in that activity once the possibility of a reward was removed. And on the punishment side of things, what happens once I'm no longer afraid of your punishment? I now have the power to defy with impunity. Any of you with teens and preteens will have seen this. Now, there is a place for the reward culture. Where the task is straightforward and you follow a linear path to completion, there is a positive correlation between incentive and activity. However, the minute the task becomes cognitive, becomes complex, and requires creativity, the reward or incentive motivator fails. In fact, it's actually shown to have exactly the reverse effect. It effectively demotivates and performance falls. Traditional motivation was assumed to be the only form of motivation. People came to work because they got paid. Work provided needs satisfaction in the material realm, so at the bottom of Maslow's now famous hierarchy. Work was not considered to be self-actualizing. Why would anyone find a sense of purpose or joy in work? Things have changed, and we now talk of the engaged employee. That sounds like something a long way from the carrot and stick approach, thankfully. Hertzberg took this idea to task in 1960 by classifying the needs into two broad categories, namely hygiene factors and motivating factors. Hygiene factors are needed to make sure that an employee is not dissatisfied. Motivation factors are needed for ensuring employees' satisfaction and motivation for higher performance. Mere presence of hygiene factors does not guarantee motivation, and the presence of motivation factors and the absence of hygiene factors also does not work. The biggest revelation here was that money was a hygiene factor rather than a motivator. This is supported by the argument that paying someone more will not see an increase in their level of motivation, commitment, nor a sustained increase in their performance or productivity. But this doesn't mean you can't pay them and just offer them lots of praise for work well done and additional responsibility. It doesn't work like that. You still have to pay someone fairly, or money will effectively become a demotivator. So using Hertzberg's ideas to ensure motivation of employees is simple. Motivate using the motivators and make sure that the hygiene factors are met. Let's now tie this into personality type basics. Carl Jung described individuals' attitude as how we react to experiences. Those with an introverted preference tend to engage with this experience through observation and reflection, while those with an extroverted preference want to be part of the experience. They want to take action and get involved. The optimal arousal path for an extrovert is very different to that of an introvert. Are you matching the way you engage with the correct attitude of the person you're engaging with? Introverts are likely to have lower optimal arousal levels than that of an extrovert. It is unlikely they'll want excitement and rah-rah to motivate them. They'll want you to slow down. Embrace silence. Travel at their speed, not yours. You will need to listen even more intently to what they are and what they are not saying. Don't ambush them. Give them space and time to think things through before you talk to them. Check with them as to the frequency of contact that works for them. Just a word of warning here, don't fall for the old "I'll call you." We all know what that means. If you really want them to confide in you, you will need to take the lead. Show them that you trust them. This is about building and extending trust. Do not expect immediate reciprocation. With the extroverts on your team, they need frequent contact. This is about contact and not necessarily about specific information. Keep the conversation upbeat and lively. Use proactive language. Thank them for their contribution, even if it was less than considered. Extroverts do have a tendency to speak prior to thinking. For more on this, contact us how we can use Insights Discovery to bring your teams together and build understanding and enhance leadership. Now, McGregor had a different take on motivation by looking at employees as two separate groups, and he called them Theory X and Theory Y. Theory X employees come to work just to earn a living. They have no desire for responsibility, don't enjoy work, and would avoid it altogether if they could. Due to these conditions, employees need to be continually prompted, rewarded, or punished in order to get tasks done. Theory Y, on the other hand, is a more intrinsic view. Employees come to work because they want to. They enjoy the work, they want to be better at it, they like the idea of more responsibility, and thrive when it's given. These two divergent views on the workforce lead to very different manager responses, primarily based around trust. Do I trust my employees to do the right thing? To get on with their work, to address challenges head on, to provide discretionary effort, to support and be an advocate for the organisation, or not. Trust or lack thereof determines my paradigm of how I interact with my team and how frequently I should check up on them, whether I need to find out whether they know what they're doing all the time, whether they're on top of things, etc., etc., etc. If I treat you with a lack of trust and you are both competent and confident, you will become demotivated, and this will be reflected in your work. As a manager, we need to question our own paradigms around how we view our workforce, as this will again inform how we connect and interact with them, as the paradigm around trust also leads to our view of ARC. So what is ARC? ARC stands for Autonomy, Relatedness and Competence. These have been shown time and time again to be basic human needs and our desire to grow. Human beings want to flourish, we want to grow, we want to be more than we are today. We want to connect with others and feel a sense of achievement for what we're actually doing. We've moved beyond just subsisting at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy. When it comes to motivating others, the question we need to ask ourselves as managers is, are we providing an environment where people can grow, where people are able to connect with others, and where people's achievements are recognised? A lot of this has been upended with the situation we find ourselves in now. In order for these three things to occur, we need the support of a manager and we need connection with the people around us. How that support and connection is delivered has changed, but it is still required. So let's look at each of these three basic psychological needs: autonomy, relatedness, and competence. Autonomy is a perceived need humans have for choices. Being able to make a choice puts me in control. The motivated individuals feels that they have a degree of control over their day-to-day activity. For those of you that have read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, you'll recognise that autonomy is grounded in habit 1, be proactive, the habit of choice and responsibility for the same. When it comes to motivating others, we need to ensure that our team members feel they have been given the opportunity to make choices rather than having them pulled away from them or heaped upon them. Don't think this means becoming permissive and hands-off as a manager. What it means is ensuring that the employee feels that they have a degree of control in what, when, where, and how they do things. Empowerment and autonomy are intimately interwoven. The more empowered I feel, the more autonomous I can become. That allows me to grow as an individual and as an employee. Relatedness is about human connection, to care about and be cared about by others, to feel we are part of something bigger. Sometimes the easiest way to understand a word is to consider its opposite. The opposite of relatedness is insignificance, meaninglessness, disconnection, a lack of belonging or sense of place. As we are fundamentally gregarious animals, we tend to group together for safety, convenience, and companionship. And one of the challenges the COVID-19 situation has put us in is that relatedness, as we knew it, has been swept away. One of the things the last 20 years has given us is social media, a different way of connecting and relating to others. And oftentimes when we hear managers and leaders talk about motivating people at work, that is another way of them saying, I don't want people wasting their time on social media when they should be working. What they don't appreciate is that what those people are looking for is relatedness. They're not getting it at work, so they're turning to their mobile devices and the mediums of Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, etc. to get that psychological need met. The challenge we need to address is how do we promote healthy interpersonal relationships in the working environment, and now we're not sitting next to each other, how do we use digital and virtual mediums to achieve this? One of the reasons motivating others doesn't work is because you can't force a sense of relatedness onto another. We need to be careful with the desire to demonstrate connection with others, that you don't come across as self-serving and giving people the impression that they're just a means to an end or a donkey to plough a field. The minute someone perceives you as that, and doing one of those things, is the minute that your desire to motivate becomes a demotivator. In order to become a master in the field of relatedness, you need to start listening to your people more. Specifically, you need to develop the skill of empathic listening. This is listening with the intent to understand, not to judge, not to agree, not to disagree, not to fix, but just to understand. We go into this in Habit 5 of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Contact Jonathan if you'd like to know more information on how we can help here. Now, the last of the 3 motivating psychological needs is competence, or as Dan Pink puts it, mastery, which is our need to feel we have the ability to achieve our objectives and goals with a degree of expertise. What are you doing to improve the competence of those in your team? The challenge at this time is that we are overwhelmed by a change of working environment, the health and safety of those around us, our preoccupations about money and work that are getting the better of us is putting everything else on hold. As managers, we need to reset this view and make sure that you demonstrate that ongoing learning and development is a priority. This will be difficult, but it will motivate your people by showing them that you care about them as growing individuals, not just task accomplishment machines. So this is not about motivating others. It's about understanding them and using that understanding to connect with them. It is this connection that increases my self-esteem and self-worth. It is this connection that shows you care. So motivating others becomes less about them and more about me as their manager. Motivating others is not something you do to them, but something you do with them. So consider the following action points and remember that your people are already motivated. You just need to work out the combination to unlock that already existing motivation. Rather than thinking about motivating employees, what we really need to think about is removing the demotivators from their environment. It's really not that difficult. Provide a working environment that meets their needs. Build and extend trust. Communicate with them on their level. Give them opportunities to shine and grow. Listen with empathy and demonstrate that you genuinely care. Do these things and you will soon see that motivation is intrinsic. It comes from within your people, not from some kind of trick or psychological technique that you do to them. I hope this has given you a new view of motivation. On behalf of Jonathan, Alina and myself, I thank you for your time and we look forward to seeing you at the next session of The Isolated Leader.